Hi, everybody. Welcome to the CSC Basics program and webinar. I'm so delighted that you've decided to spend your afternoon with us, or depending on what area of the country that or world that you are, it might be a different time of day. I am a psychologist joining you from Cambridge, Massachusetts. I'm a part of the early psychosis working group of the SAMHSA-funded Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, specifically the New England region. And I'm so delighted to have you join us for this series today. There's a part of me that's very sad because this is the last one of a 7-part series that we've been running that is geared towards teaching people about the various components of coordinated specialty care for early psychosis. And it's been a wonderful process. If you haven't seen some of our other webinars, I really encourage you to check out the recordings for some of the ones that we've done previously. We're also using components of all of these webinars as part of a course that's going to be open source, freely available on the Healthy Knowledge website. That's going to be a way to kind of help orient new staff to working on CSE teams. So, this series, has been a partnership between the Early Psychosis Working Group, the New England MHTTC, as well as some partners from around the country who've just been tremendously helpful in thinking about this course and contributing wonderful ideas. Each one of these webinars is co-presented by a professional with expertise in that component of care, as well as individuals with expertise that comes from lived experience, who speak to how this aspect of care has been meaningful in their journey towards recovery. And for today, let me see, I think I'm not in line with my slides. For today, we have a wonderful group of presenters who will be speaking on supported employment and education. So we have Shirley Glynn, Chris Poole, and Logan Feller, and I'll tell you a little bit about each one of them. So Shirley Glynn received her doctorate in clinical and social psychology from the University of Illinois at Chicago in 1985. Dr. Glynn is a research psychologist at UCLA who has been conducting research on psychosocial interventions, most especially family interventions, supported employment, and social skills training to support recovery from schizophrenia and other psychotic illnesses over the last 30 years. She is a master trainer for the supported employment and education component of the RAISE Navigate training team, and has provided supported employment and education training in over 20 states. Chris Poole has been a supported employment and education specialist within the Navigate model since 2020. He has 10 years of experience in the mental health field, including graduating with a bachelor's of social work in 2012 from the University of Northern Iowa. What he most enjoys working with the team is the amount of collaboration with all the team members working in the direction that the client is interested in, and that team members communicate with family and client support network. Logan Feller is a 22-year-old male, enjoys playing video games, creating things with perler beads, and going on walks. He has a cat and a few plants, and he enjoys caring for. Oh, sorry for background noise. There's fire trucks going by. He has been with the first program for about 2 years and has been working with multiple areas of the program since the beginning. I'm so delighted that all of you have joined us, and really look forward to your presentation as well as our discussion. And for those of you in the audience, I'm so grateful for folks who keep their cameras on and really show us that you're listening. It's so nice to feel connected with you. So I will turn things over now to Dr. Glynn.
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle. And let me just check in again. When do we usually want to open it up for general questions or discussion?
Our goal would be to have time to open up for general questions by about 2:35, 2:40.
Okay, great, thanks. So hi everybody, I'm looking at the names and I see some friends here, which is lovely to see. Thanks for coming here today. As Michelle said, I've been doing work in supported employment really for about 20 years now, and in first episode for about the past 10 or 11. So we're thrilled you're here. How we've designed the day is I'm going to just give everybody a few foundational slides, reminding you what supported employment and education typically consists of in first episode psychosis programs. And then after we do that, we're going to have a conversation between Chris and Logan and myself. So Michelle, next slide, please. This is just to remind you that generally for most of the programs, whether you're doing On Track or ESA or whatever, most of us are working within the paradigm of what was designed by Debbie Becker and Bob Drake in the individual placement and support model. The real goal is to help people get back to work or school as soon as possible after their entry into the first episode program. Gretchen is here. I do know Gretchen. There you go. Goals to we try to get people jobs or educational opportunities that fit with their personal goals. It's not the thing that Costco is hiring, so let's all go down to Costco. And we, in contrast to most state voc rehab programs, we continue working with people for a substantial amount of time, usually until they fire us because they're doing well. And so it's not like we close cases after 90 days like they might do in voc rehab. And another critical thing about our model is that the employment specialist and the education specialist, typically the same person, is part of the Navigate treatment team. It's not like you refer somebody to other services at another agency. They're really a critical part of the treatment team. Next slide, Michelle. Okay, so what are the key tenets of a supported employment specialist, an education specialist, C specialist? Okay, try to figure out why someone wants to go to work or go back to school. What's really driving them? Figure out what their strengths are. I think positive psychology tells us that it's much easier to build on people's strengths than it is to try to bolster their weaknesses. We certainly want to help people if there are areas of improvement, but we definitely want to identify what people are good at and see if they can maximize that in the vocational or educational world, just like anybody else. We pay careful attention to trying to match people with the right position, and that can take some time. We don't expect people to change a lot for a job. If somebody's not a morning person, we're not getting them a job typically making breakfast at a restaurant. We're trying to really kind of understand people where they are. And as I said, we want to provide ongoing support and anticipate problems that people may have as they're progressing in their work or educational career. Next slide, Michelle. Okay. Now, one thing we have to think of, and this is always a little bit of a trick, is that we're typically in a first episode program looking at people who are relatively new to the workforce. They're not, it's not like they're doing IPS and they came to the mental health center and they've had 20 jobs and now they've been unemployed and are thinking about going back. So part of what we always have to think of when we're working with people is what's appropriate for a development, where folks are developmentally, regardless of whether they have a mental illness, a psychiatric disability, whatever term you want to use. What is the world of work like if you're 21, 22, 23? And these are the challenges people often have. They may have no identity as a worker because they never worked. They may have little experience. They may not fully understand finances and what it costs to live and what they should be negotiating about. And they may have few role models. They may be from a family where there aren't other people getting up and out to work. So the C specialist may be the major person who's trying to help them change and inculcate those cultural values. Next slide, Michelle. Okay, we've talked about jobs in school, and they're important. But I also want to say another distinguishing factor of being a C specialist is you're meeting someone typically at the beginning of their work or school career. And so we're really at the place where people are making decisions about where they're going to go in life. This is not true for everybody, but if you think of yourself when you were 19, 20, 21, 22, you were probably trying to get on some kind of career path, either by choosing a major in college or maybe some technical training or whatever. So, unlike some of the more traditional IPS programs you may be aware of, we're really also trying to keep a spotlight on career. So here's a definition here of a career, and this is always brought home to me when I do these trainings, because of course the youngins, the 21, 22-year-olds who are working at Grubhub or whatever, they're sort of struggling with what am I going to do, and maybe I don't need a career, but we're thinking about that way. Um, and we are meeting people at this critical point in their lives. And this work is so important because they may never in their lives again meet anybody who's as invested in helping them progress in a career or education role than the C specialist is. So it's really important when we meet people. And in fact, it's such an important outcome, whether people go back to work or school, that when NIMH initially funded the first episode psychosis programs, you may have heard the RAISE programs. There were two. There was a RCT and a more kind of naturalistic one. Both of them, a key thing NIMH was interested in was, are people going back to work or school? We want to help with symptoms, but this is also important too. Next slide. Okay, I'm just going to quickly, Michelle, if you just run these down, just to remind you the critical C slides, that we help people get real jobs, that the C specialist works in the community, not behind a desk, that the results are better when people are in the community, that the C specialist needs to be working with the other team members. And that can be a little hard because often the C specialist is the person with the least formal education in the team, but they often know the client the best. So giving them an opportunity at a team meeting to share what's going on, that's essential. Anything else? Yeah. As we're going to hear a little later, I think, from Logan, families can make or break how the C work goes. If the family is very supportive of somebody going to work or school, it can be great. If they're worried somebody might have a relapse and want to put the brakes on, that can be tricky. So I'm really going to encourage you, if you're in this position, make a relationship with the consumer's consent, with the family as well. So everybody can be on the same page and share information. Next. Okay. And people come into our programs and they're often afraid. And they may have just gotten out of a hospitalization. They're afraid they can't even think straight. They have medication problems, sometimes side effects. So they often say no initially to getting a job or going back to school. The onus is on us to re-engage with them. So go back every 3 months or 6 months, every time there's a treatment team meeting. Next slide. And I think this is my last one. Oh, yes, good work. Okay, so if you have questions about anything, please feel free to email me. That's fine. And now we are going to go into our dialogue. And I am here with two terrific people. First of all, I'm here with Chris Poole. Chris and I have been working together for, I would say, about the past year or so. He is from the Abbey Center in Cedar Rapids, I think. He'll correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
and he's, I'm right. Okay. And he's just been a terrific C specialist. I've learned a lot from him. He's got a real go-getter attitude, which is great. And during the last couple of consultations we've had, he has been talking about his work with the consumer we have here, Logan. And it really sort of was heartwarming to hear how he and Logan were negotiating their relationship and also the strides Logan was making. So I asked them to co-present with me today, which is terrific. And they are here, and hopefully you can see them. There's so many boxes, I can't quite see them now, but if you can, that's great. And we're going to start. I have a question I want to start with Chris. And then I'm going to ask Logan a couple questions, and we'll go back and forth a little bit. And then, as you heard Michelle say, we'll then open it up for general questions. So, Chris, I wanted to ask you, what initially drew you to becoming a C specialist?
So I was working a role here at the Abbey Center, working with people in the homeless population. And I was really seeing people at kind of the end state. They've gone through a whole bunch of services. They had gotten to this spot that was just really tough for them. And this position as an SEE opened up at my agency. And I was very interested in working with people that were at the first stages of treatment. And really, I liked the idea of service heavy in the beginning to try to stabilize, get back out in the community, and hopefully prevent from getting to the stages that I was ultimately working with people at now. So I also was in a role that was very independent, and I wanted to work more in a team. And I really liked the idea of the team and them meeting very regularly and working collaboratively. I was very interested in that.
That's terrific. And what do you consider the best part of your job?
I get to work with people like Logan.
Okay.
So I get to work with my team. I love my team. They're awesome. I know if we have things going on that I can communicate with them. And not only that, but to see I'm out there in the community, the other members are not in the community. I could bring what's going on in the community to my team. And they don't get to see that. Like with the doctor only gets so much time with the client. They're not normally knowing what else other factors are going on in their lives. And I can help them understand what's going on. And I see the team sees that as value, and that feels good to me.
Okay, so it's being out in the community, seeing people's multidimensional lives and seeing some progress. That all sounds great. And Logan, tell us a little bit about where you are in your work journey. I gather you've had a couple jobs. What are you doing now? And what was your job before? What are you working with?
So right now, what I'm doing at this exact moment is I'm working for the ARC of East Central Iowa, which is basically a group that helps people with special needs. Overall, I am a intern through Kirkwood. I was working with a program, the Creating Futures program, through Iowa Works. And they set me up with a Kirkwood internship. Before the ARC, I worked at Little Caesars. That was a good job, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do with my life. So I decided to try other jobs, and now I'm working for the ARC, which is definitely a job that I want to do. I enjoy helping people. And I was kind of inspired by people like Chris, where he seems to be doing a lot of good with his life, and I want to do a lot of good with my life.
So you're saying a couple important things. First of all, you're saying Chris became a bit of a role mentor to you and a role model, which is great. And you're also reminding us you started a job and it was okay, but it wasn't the perfect match for you in the way that you would have liked. So you kept looking, and that can be sometimes a little stressful for a C specialist if they're hoping somebody will stick. But it's nice that you had the energy then to start a new thing and find it. What are your job tasks? What do you actually do, Logan, when you're at work? What are your job tasks?
So at the ARC, what I mainly do is I watch people. Sometimes they're going to be kids, sometimes it's going to be adults, depending on what room I'm in. But basically just watch them, make sure they're safe, provide snacks and fun activities to do that are also inclusive. It's very important, the inclusive part of that, because we have to make sure that as our patients have special needs, they all need to feel included and all need to be having fun. Well, at least hopefully most of them are.
That's great. And how much are you working? How many hours a week are you working?
I work Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays currently for 6 hours a day.
Okay. And Chris told us that you recently were awarded Social Security disability, I think.
Yes, that is true.
And how does that factor into your decision about working?
One thing is that it makes me feel a lot of comfort because I know that if I have a schizophrenic episode, which is what I have schizophrenia. If I have an episode like that, I'll be covered and I won't
Hmm.
be completely in a bad spot. But even though there are limitations to how much you can work with Social Security, I still am very much interested in working.
And did Chris or did someone help you work out how many hours you could work without compromising your Social Security?
Yeah, Chris, but also the Amy who works with the Iowa Works program.
Okay. Okay. Great. Great. Chris, you want to tell us a little bit about your work with Logan? What kinds of things you've done and what kinds of things you've been emphasizing?
Yeah, so when Logan decided he wanted to start working and finding something, we did do the career and interest inventory to kind of get an idea from the SCE manual, and try to get an idea of what he's interested in. And then once he got the job, Logan did have some time where he was not able to go to work because of his mental health. We did talk about disclosure. And so Logan actually allowed me to reach out on his behalf to his employer to kind of help them understand he was not going to be there and just make sure he was still interested and that he wouldn't lose his job. So we had a conversation about what disclosure is, and Logan was comfortable with that. So we've been able to do that. In his current job, he has found things that he likes at his job and has really opened his eyes into what he's interested in. And I think that was kind of one of the major things is Logan was interested in helping people in the human service field, but had never had experience. So we helped him kind of find a in so he could do some of that and really identify what he is interested in.
Okay. And Logan, from your perspective, what are the kinds of things Chris has been doing that have been helpful for you?
One big thing is, like he mentioned, he helped me find the job at the ARC. So just helping me find work, and then when I'm at the job, helping me keep the job and make sure that everything's going good. For example, I had a schizophrenic episode while working for the ARC. And while I was in the hospital, Chris contacted my work to let them know that I was at the hospital currently. So that way, hopefully I would not get fired, which I didn't. It worked out, so.
So you're talking about something that can be really challenging, and it's wonderful you shared it. And it's the notion about going back to work after you've had maybe a symptom setback.
Yeah.
And what was that like for you? Were you nervous? Were people kind? Were you stressed? What was that like?
One thing that's awesome about the ARC is that they are very tolerant of like people with mental illnesses like me. So there definitely wasn't any like negative feedback. The only real negative thing was that every 2 weeks they have us on a Friday do this is for Iowa Works. They have us do a review, and they gave me a 4 rating for attendance, but that was to be expected.
How long were you off work?
Probably about, I think, a week and a half.
Okay. You went back pretty quickly.
One thing I'd like to add, Shirley,
Yeah.
Something that I've noticed that Logan's done that he's never done before. When he was applying for jobs, he never followed up on applications. So he would submit them and then just not follow up on them. Another one was he missed work, and instead of going back to work, he would just not go. And
Right.
he actually, because of that fear of following up. So Logan and I worked that out of how he would talk to them, reached out to them, and he was able to do it.
That's great. That's really wonderful. And it sounds like the support you gave him was pretty invaluable. So that you guys are a good team. Logan, how has working changed your life?
It's definitely given me a sense of purpose. It's given me something that I can feel like I'm doing something with my life. I'm making the lives of other people better. It also helps me with setting a schedule, because I definitely do better. I think most people do better even, but I especially do better on a schedule, being able to have a time where I consistently get up and go to work. Some days it's not fun getting up in the morning, but I think it's ultimately good.
I would say that's probably true for all of us.
Agreed.
Some days it's just a little hard. Absolutely. Honestly. Logan, what's been the most challenging aspect of you going to work?
Probably having schizophrenia can make it overall on some days more than others, it can be a bit prominent. So it makes it a bit tricky working at my job. But definitely just like getting up in the morning too, there's stuff that everyone relates to.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Worrying about the people's safety is a big thing too.
Can you say more about that?
Just making sure that they stick with the group. Sometimes they like to try to run off. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Then also when you're at like a park, for example, maybe there'll be 2 people for every worker, and then you have to keep track of 2 people.
Right. So you've got a job with a lot of responsibility, because you're really having to keep an eye on these people and make sure that they go back to their homes or residences safe and sound. I can understand how that would be stressful. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's definitely worth it.
Nice to hear you say that. Nice to hear you say that. And Chris, from your perspective, what's the most challenging aspect of your job? Not necessarily with Logan. I mean, just more generally, what's challenging?
I would say the most challenging aspect is reaching out to new employers. I mean, when I came in and began, I think it was, what is my pitch? What can I offer, and how can I show this employer I could be beneficial to them?
Yeah.
I think that was probably the hardest. Yeah, I had some failures in that, but I had some successes. So, I mean, and I learned from them. But I would say definitely that it was the most daunting of it, is how do I go to an employer and explain this? And I'd say after the sessions we've had on SEE and kind of going through the manual a little bit more, I found it much more comfortable to be able to do that, but it just takes time and practice.
Yeah, it does take time and practice. And if I push you right now, what advice would you give people who are just learning to be seen and are a little nervous about going out to the community to approach an employer? What 2 or 3 pieces of advice you would give people? It can be daunting.
Give yourself a break. You're gonna fall down, but get back up. I mean, you have to. I say look at it from the employer's perspective. That might be the best way is, what would the employer expect from you? I mean, because you're going to be going there seeing your side. I would say just, make sure that you're out there and honest. And I think that with the way that there's jobs available right now, employers are looking for people. And if they can know that someone's going to become qualified, has supports, and wants to work, I think that's showing that would be the best thing.
Okay. Yes. Remembering you're providing a service for the employer instead of concentrating on I'm exclusively providing a service for the consumer. Correct. That it's a little bit of a dialectic. We're doing both. And Logan, how about, do you have a sense of where you'd like to go in your career from here? Are there skills you want to sharpen up? Do you think about going to school? Do you think about learning how to be a manager where you are? Do you have a sense at all about things you'd like to do as a next step or skills you'd like to sharpen up?
Yeah, definitely. So right now, the ARC, I'm currently in the summer program, which is basically, as it sounds, a program over the summer, mainly for kids, but also adults. And that's actually going to be ending soon. So what I'm doing right now is I'm reaching out to my employer at the ARC to see if I can go ahead and find other opportunities at the ARC to continue working there.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So that's kind of the spot that I'm at right now for what I'd like to do currently. But overall, I definitely know I want to be in a field where I'm helping people or maybe even animals, just helping other living beings and giving them a good life that's worth living.
Okay. Okay. And you shared with us before we came on the for the webinar that sometimes you and your family have a slightly different view about what would be a good use of your time. Can you talk a little bit about what that sort of not maybe disagreement, but that different points of view might be and how you've worked on resolving them?
Yeah, so one example would be with my mom. Now, I absolutely love my mom. She's my favorite person in the whole wide world. She's absolutely amazing. But she does want me to go to college, whereas with me, I would be willing to go to college if I think it would help me with getting a career that I want. But I'm perfectly fine not going to college. So that kind of creates a little bit of disagreement there. I've been working with my mom on it, and although she still encourages me, she'll like point out different things, like maybe being a CMT or DNA.
Yeah.
And she'll try encouraging me to do fields that require me to go to college, but I wouldn't be surprised if I go to college, but I also am not necessarily needing to go to college.
Okay. Okay. More will be revealed. All right. I have two other things I want to do before we turn it over to the group. One is I want to give a shout out to Liz Breen, who is Chris's boss, who's here from Abby and helped navigate this whole thing, which has been wonderful. And I also, so thank you so much, Liz, for that. And then finally, before we turn it over, Logan, I was going to ask you what advice you would give to somebody who's in a first episode for psychosis program like you are, and if they're contemplating going back to work or school. What kind of advice, what would you encourage them to think about or consider? Or, what advice would you give?
That's a great question. The biggest thing that I could think of is go ahead and reach out to your SEE specialists or whoever you're working with. Actually make sure that you engage with them and tell them what you're interested in. Don't be afraid to open up with them because they are there to help you. It's what they're getting paid to do.
That's great. Thank you. Lovely. All right, Michelle, I think we're at the 2:35, 2:36 moment. So do you want to help us through the next phase?
Fantastic. Well, first, let's give a huge round of applause for Logan and Chris and Shirley. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. I feel like I've learned so much. If folks have questions, they can go ahead and unmute and ask them, or you can put them in the chat, whatever you're most comfortable with. And while people are thinking about their questions, I have one that I'll ask. And this is for Logan and Chris. I wonder if you're thinking about new people who are working on a coordinated specialty care team, they might not be C specialists. They might be coming in to work as a psychiatrist or a therapist or, a peer coordinator. What would you like them to know about what C specialists do and what people who participate in those services do?
So I think, and this is someone that would be wanting to maybe make a referral to our program.
It could be somebody working with a C specialist in another program, but who
Oh,
doesn't know much about what they do just yet.
sure. So I would say reaching out to our program and maybe setting up a time to meet with one of us. And we can, like, it's the SEE for sure, could kind of explain a little bit about what we do, the types of clients that, then that kind of explain, like, because it's employment or education, or it doesn't have to one or the other, or maybe that or both, just depending on what the client's interested in. So I think reaching out to us, and our team is always receptive to talking to people about our program.
Great, thank you. And anything that you think, like maybe it's folks across the country, so they might be in, nowhere near your program in Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be differences, I would say probably statewide, depending on barriers and things that maybe other people are challenged working with in different states than this one. So yeah,
Cool.
I don't say, Logan, anything to add?
Not really. I've heard that there are programs like this pretty much everywhere across America and even across the world. So if you're looking for support, you probably should hopefully be able to find it. Just gotta ask the right people.
And I really think the program's gaining momentum. So I think that they're looking at ways to improve, adding in funds for different things. So I just see, and this has been going really well. The research is showing that it's helping. So I think as it develops and more things added, it'll just be ever changing. I think getting an update of what is offered now. So
Thank you. Christina asks, what is the best way to introduce yourself as a supported employment and education specialist to employers for the first time? What's the best way to break the nervousness?
So generally, if I'm going to a new employer, I haven't met the person before, I'm generally setting up an appointment. And when I'm over the phone, I say, I'm an employment specialist. I work with individuals to try to find jobs. And I would like to come and talk about the benefit that I can offer to your employer. So, so that's usually what I'm saying if I'm going to set up the first time. What I do when I go to a first meeting is I like to see what do they need. Like, what are they looking for? What is their agency needs for employment? So I try to really get information about their agency. And then from that, I can talk about how my role can assist in that. So that's what the first contact is kind of like.
Awesome.
Can I add, there's a couple other things to break nervousness. One is think about what you're offering an employer. Typically, you're offering somebody who's open to part-time or full-time work, who's flexible. Typically, they have scheduling flexibility and has shown some real determination to get back into the workforce. So those are three things that you're offering that any boss would probably want. I talked to a boss this morning who hires for a big pizza chain, and he's like, I can't get anybody in here to work. If somebody showed up and said, I've been working with this person for a couple months, are really interested in this, we've been scoping out your place, might be a good fit, people are often very happy. Although we never walk in and say, are you hiring? Okay, zilcho on that.
Yeah.
You want to build a relationship with the people first.
One other thing I like to add too that can also help you feel more comfortable is find job fairs. Job fairs, you have a bunch of employers. You could do a quick speech to each one of them, kind of build up that confidence of how you feel about introducing your program to a lot of different individuals very quickly. Then once you kind of get that, then you'll feel more comfortable. But job fairs are great. You get business cards, you get to give out your business cards. So.
And Linda wrote a great rap, initial rap in the chat. You know, nice way. Typically, you'll hear Chris didn't say and Linda didn't say, I'm working with people with mental illness. You know, because you don't really know where people are with this right now with this closure. You don't know. So, you know, you're working with people who've been out of the job force, may want to, but want to get back in. And don't ask in that first interview if they accommodate people with disabilities. Try to first get the relationship going a little bit. You can always ask for accommodations, but that can be off-putting to people. So first, your first, it's that 3 cups of tea. You're supposed to be developing a relationship with people first, if you possibly can. Employers, by that I mean.
Thank you. And I see Julie's got a question.
Thanks so much. So I'm a psychologist at McLean Hospital, and I work with families of people with early psychosis. And one of the things that comes up is sometimes families are wondering how much they should encourage or maybe give a gentle push or nudge for a loved one to maybe get back to work or explore work. And I'm wondering what advice you have for families who are wondering how much is too much to push, or alternatively, we also have people who have a loved one who's working a lot, and then the family member is a little nervous about it being too much. That might be too stressful and could be overwhelming. So yeah, what do you tend to say to families who might have concerns in one of those areas, or maybe both?
I would say there's a couple different things. The first thing that comes up to mind is the FEP. With the FEP, working with the family and having those team meetings, you're kind of discussing some of the things that are coming up of concerns with the family member, but also I think an education on what the participant is interested in, and having that of how would you bring that to your family? What do you feel is comfortable? And so it's from a couple different directions. I would say it's from there to there to try to take in what they're saying, and but also see where the participants at and what they're thinking, and then try to go through that. That's what I would say.
Great. Thank you.
Maybe I would also add that that's a common question. It's common for family members and loved ones to be concerned either way. Some are pushing people to go back quickly. Others are concerned and, you know, are concerned and don't want people to go back at all. And I agree with Chris about using the family member the family expert on your team, and also you developing a relationship with the family so that you can help sort of reassure them. Start collecting up stories of other people who've been successful in your program. And so you can talk a little bit about that. Sometimes it's even nice to have, for agencies to have like once or twice a year a pizza night, invite the people in who are working, and have the family members, have all the families and other clients come. They can sort of see people are working and doing this, and maybe even sometimes they give out certificates if people have been working for like 3 months or some amount of time. So family members get a sense of, yeah, there are people who are really doing this. And that can also allay some concerns.
The only other thing I'd add too is conjoined meetings. Having the SCE and the FEP meet kind of with the family too, and kind of discuss that could also be another option too.
Awesome, thank you. Sonia asks, does the C specialist assist the person at the job site, or is it primarily locating opportunities for the person?
So majority of the support is going to not be on the job site. It's going to be kind of preparing for the job site while they're there, things that are kind of going on. It can, I believe, right, Shirley? Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's not as much. It'd be more of just like preparing, finding the job, and dealing with things kind of as things are developing.
Yeah, a good C specialist is getting somebody a job they can do. This model is not a model that emphasizes a lot of on-the-job training by the C specialist. That distinguishes it a little bit from some programs like for people with developmental disabilities, where they may always have a job coach with them. Now, we occasionally have worked with people who, I can think of one guy we worked with who was a dishwasher at a nursing home. And there were a particular set of steps he had to follow to do the dishes. And he was having a little trouble remembering it all. And so we worked with him, not me, but the person I was supervising, kind of developed a cheat sheet he could put over the sink. And we spent one chore of duty practicing that and seeing how that goes. But if somebody really needs a lot of help on the job site, doing the job, it's generally not a good match. So, we have to start again.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions for this group?
Let me say one other thing to Sonia's thing, because she's saying it's primarily locating opportunities. I don't think locating opportunities is important, but you also want to recall that the C specialist is working with the person, typically for months while they have the job. And it's not so much seeing if they can do the job task, but monitoring whether people are getting counseled at work, whether they're making it, have they thought about promotion, or how are they getting along with people? Are they getting suspicious at work? Are they part of the social culture at work, which a lot of people we struggle with, same with school. So it involves a lot more. I mean, both rehab, the state programs, they're particularly good at locating opportunities, but not necessarily following up much. Our job is to help locate opportunities, but then continue to follow up. And now I will shut up.
That's awesome. And there's a couple more comments and questions that trickled in. One is just to thank you, Logan, for sharing your expiring experience. And the other question, or the question is, have you had success in building employment networks online?
I've used some online. I mean, a lot of jobs are posting online with COVID right now. So even when we're doing kind of in person, you might still hear you need to go online and apply for jobs or view for openings. We do here in Cedar Rapids have a lot of primary agencies that have a lot of jobs. So like factories or work like that. There's a lot of places that have warehouse work and stuff, but a lot of places are still looking to apply online. You can't really drop off an app in person anymore. But so that's kind of online used.
Makes sense. And I'm wondering if the question was actually about remote work experience.
Oh,
where somebody's actually working remotely.
I have not had any remote jobs yet. So unfortunately, a lot of mine are still in person that I've been helping find.
We've had a few people like that. When some people excel, but I think those are people who are pretty are capable of working with a lot of autonomy, can really sort of manage their time well throughout the day, aren't that distracted by other people. We do get people who can work at home. There are several jobs like that you can find, but it's really got to be a person who can sort of manage themselves well to be able to do that, I would say.
Well, once again, just want to say thank you to the three of you for sharing your wisdom and your experience. And I hope that all of you who have joined us for the webinar have a wonderful afternoon, and I hope we'll be able to connect. We'll be sending a kind of post-webinar questionnaire. We'll follow up with a link to the slides and the recording for this. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
We appreciate you letting us come to and talk.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.